Hi everyone, like Nate said, I am Kim Miller. A lot of you might know me from owning Tribune Showprint. It's an old historic letterpress shop. I used to actually be in Madjax, so a lot of people saw me during First Thursdays, but now I'm moved into the old antique mall on Broadway because we needed more room for more big machines because we can't help ourselves. So that's where I'm at. On top of that, I am the chair of MuncieArts. I'm on the Human Rights Commission. I run the Old Washington Street Festival and Oktoberfest. And Oktoberfest is really special to me because we're helping ecoREHAB with that as a fundraiser. So I know a lot of you guys know that organization by being involved with everything here. And I'm confident there's a lot of other things, but I won't go into it all on what I do. So today I am coming here to talk to you about placemaking and community building through public art. This is a Mac versus PC problem. I did not format this way. So you might ask, what is creative placemaking and why is this important? So creative placemaking is a practice that uses the strengths of the art and culture strategies and creativity to build stronger and healthier communities. It's a lot of ways to say, arts help keep people here, essentially. So this practice involves engaging public and private and nonprofit partners in creating activities, sustaining public spaces, and fostering a sense of place, civic pride, and economic opportunities. This isn't a new concept by any means. It has gotten really popular in I guess how it's worded and people kind of getting it back into the forefront of how important this is to communities. But this has been centuries. People have done this. If you think back, in history, we weren't there yet, but in the 17th and 18th centuries, there are parks. They put giant gardens in there for people to walk around and see. It was more than just playground equipment, trees, some benches. Ancient Rome, their markets were built around, artisans. And so, not new, we're just kind of revitalizing the concepts. Why is it important? One thing, it brings new attention to elevate key community assets and issues, voices of residents, local history, or cultural infrastructure. So one really good example of this, so this photo is from it's called Underpass Park in Toronto. It was an underpass that had not been used very much anymore. It was kind of dark. It was dangerous to go through, and it was kind of between the north and south side of the communities. They wanted to revitalize this and make it into something that was positive for the communities, to make it a safe space again. So what they ended up doing was creating a skate park in it, putting basketball courts, and then play equipment. And then on top of that, they utilized local artists and curated public art that included sculptures. They used graffiti, because it was always graffitied. So they were like, let's take this, it's a cultural thing, put this in there and work with it like that. And they integrated, they did all of this to convey a sense of identity that surrounded all these neighborhoods that were involved. It also helps strengthen communities by injecting new and additional energy, resources, activities, people, and enthusiasm, there we go, into a place, community issues, or local economy, envisioning new possibilities for a community or a place, a new future, a new way of overcoming a challenge or approaching problem solving, while connecting community, people, places, economic opportunity via physical space or new relationships. So another example, out of Toronto again, there was an old distillery that had been closed down for decades. It had 47 different buildings in it. And so this was a huge place for the economy not to have running. And so they looked at what they could do with this. Hold on, sorry, I've got to scroll down and I'm failing at this very badly. Again, Mac person here. So what they ended up doing with this is they took the Victorian industrial complex and they wanted to keep that history of that, but also knowing that not everything can set into like a Victorian time. So they incorporated the 21st century design and creativity. They carefully curated a selection of retail spaces, art galleries, studios, theaters, restaurants, and cafes, and installed public art throughout the whole complex as well. This site once was home to the nation's largest taxpayer as a distillery, was then off the market, and it is now one of Canada's most prosperous and most acclaimed arts and cultures and entertainment center. This acted as a catalyst for the surrounding communities with it. So now those started developing just because they took this, had faith in it, revitalized it, and has now made a difference for everybody around them. There we go. So art can help with safety as well. There was a study called the Asphalt Art Safety Study. What they ended up doing is they had 17 intersections. All they did was paint art onto the street at each corner. So kind of like this. There's all kinds of these. People do art in the middle. Sometimes it's just a crosswalk. Sometimes. Out of that study, after they put the art pieces there, they studied these 17 intersections. There was a 50% decrease in the rate of crashes involving pedestrians or other valuable road users, a 30% decrease in the rate of crashes leading to injury, and 17% decrease in the total crash rate. That's pretty huge, just because somebody took the time to look at the roads that are normally pretty plain and add something to them, and it made people more cautious and looking around. Along with all of this, the arts unify our communities. Creative placemaking has an economic impact on communities because, again, property values often rise due to the proximity of arts and culture assets. People want to live near beautiful things. When you're out in your community, you want to look around, you want to see things that are interactive, that celebrate your history, that celebrate the place, the buildings that are there. And you also sometimes just want to look around and see something that is pretty. There's murals. If you think about when you go out of town, what are things you look at? The benefits of this: community engagement. Projects bring people together to imagine and shape the future of their communities, involving citizens in the process of creative placemaking and decision-making, community planning, community revitalization. It can help to strengthen community ties and build a sense of collective ownership and partnership. If you get all these entities involved and you start talking about how you can make your community stronger, there's buy-in from everyone, it's much easier to move things forward. It improves the quality of life. By incorporating art and culture activities into comprehensive plan, communities can create a sense of belonging and identity of residents, foster vibrant and inclusive public areas, and inspire creativity and collaboration. This improves physical and mental health, and it makes a stronger economic growth in your community. With that economic development, it focuses on the use of arts, culture, and creativity to create value in a particular place and improve the quality of life within that place. Improving the aesthetics of a community, it can attract more businesses to the area and create more jobs. Additionally, it can also increase foot traffic in the area, bringing in more customers and potential buyers. This can also increase property values and attract more people to live in your community. There is a study that found people are 50% more likely to spend time in places with creative placemaking than those without. Now, this doesn't come without challenges. Some challenges: funding, getting buy-in, and how do you measure the outcomes? Funding for arts has always been a hard thing. People don't understand what all the arts do, especially when you look at infrastructures are failing, roads need fixed, people are living in the woods to survive. How do we take these things and put them in the forefront when there's all these other things. So getting people to understand how this goes hand in hand and creating a better situation for everyone is something that can get funding and get buy-in into the community eventually. Measuring the outcome, everybody wants to know, okay, so you put a mural up, what did that do for the community? We can't do a road study like that. You know, you can tell how many people are driving up and down the road and if it needs to stay the same, change, whatever. When you're doing placemaking and you have a mural, there are ways, but at the end of the day, it's listening to your community is the biggest way. Are people talking about it? Are people excited about it? Are there photos of it? Is there more traffic, foot traffic, driving, you know, in that area to see this stuff? Are people happier when they're out and about because now their community is looking a little nicer? So now I'm going to kind of talk about some areas that have done things like this. When you think about art, it doesn't have to just be what you traditionally think of. It doesn't have to just be sculptures and painting. That's what people kind of always think about when it comes to the arts, because those are what you can visualize so easily. It can be usable benches that are also nice to look at, that are, you know, done in a more artistic way. They can be, you know, a platform that's in the park. It could be used for sitting on. It could be used for an artist to stand there and play a guitar. It could be used for picnics. So it can have multi-use and still look nice. And, you know, these are things that can be both large scale and small scale in a community. So here are some examples. This photo is in the District of Columbia. There we go. Creative placemaking was used there to revitalize a commercial corridor. For example, with this one specifically, they used the Office of Planning used an Art Place grant. So there are some grants out here to do some of these things. To develop an arts and cultural area in 4 emerging neighborhoods that were vacant and or underutilized with their storefronts and other lots. What they did is they transformed it into an artist showcase and village. For 3 to 6 months, they brought art to the community through pop-up art galleries, impromptu dance performances, and the design of colorful urban street furniture. The community could take advantage of vacant lots, underused properties in their communities, and transform them into hubs of activity and prosperity. So there's all kinds of places in every city that are vacant, or there's a lot that's just sitting there. What can happen? How can those be used in a different way? We always see a vacant lot, we're like, maybe a house should go there, or, you know, there's people kind of get into a certain mindset. Well, an art group out of Minnesota called the Blue Ox Artist Group came up with an idea to transform a 15-acre plot of land on a former brewery, again, into a mini golf park that also functioned as an urban park. The Blue Ox Mini Golf is creating an artist-designed mini golf course that functions as an inviting community space to bring people together for fun, outdoor recreation, and art appreciation. So it's usable, it gives the community something to do, but also if you just want to kind of hang out in there and not play, you know, games, you can do that as well. Art Blocks is another group that helped in Baltimore communities grow and organized a plan for transforming the spaces around them into a safer and more artful and livable place that connect people to environment in which they live. Art Blocks are positive public places created by people for people. So in this photo, it's an organic sculpture was created in Druid Hill Park in Baltimore to provide a venue for a story hour. In this park, there was also a farmer's market that provided communities, children with opportunities to learn, grow, and socialize. And they had a kind of like an hour that they would read out loud to children there. So this bench, where this area was underutilized, they built this bench, but to connect all those pieces with it being a farmer's market and all of that, it's a living bench. So everything kind of grows up on it. So they have different vegetation that grows. So throughout the year, you can see this become like a living, breathing thing as well. So there's little ways to kind of work that in to make it fit with the landscape around it. This is a really cool thing. So this is a photo of a pavilion in a park in San Antonio, Texas. There was an artist and an architectural team that joined to design this concrete pavilion that offered cover from the sun, and it captured rain. So all the rainwater, if you kind of look at this, there's all these channels. The rainwater would go into those channels and then go into underground storage, and they would hold all that water and then use it throughout the year to water the things in the park. So they had to use very little extra water from that. So this gave people, Texas is hot in the summer, a place to go to be under in shade while they were in the park, but also functioned and made, for the Parks Department, it was a really great thing for them to save money. In Sunset Harbor, Florida has its problems with weather, so they needed generators. People in the neighborhood were like, these are ugly, we don't want to see them. They were upset about the generators. So they all got together and they figured out what they could do is they were putting sculptures around these generators. So now they're hidden, they're still there, they're still usable and functional, but now the community doesn't have to just stare at these big things that didn't fit. So now they have art to help with that. So now the people want to stay, when you see that. So when you're thinking about parks, a lot of times you think about traditional benches, you think about concrete. People want to see more than that anymore. They know there are more possibilities. So thinking about how you can do that, this was a great way to do that. They made it into a usable space for people. Sometimes it can be really large scale, like that one was pretty large scale, but here's this. It's called the Bay of Lights. It's a great example of a large scale project. They put lights on all of this, so at night it's beautiful to be around, but it also reflects into the water, so it makes a really beautiful, nice scene at night when you're around it. Here's kind of what I was talking about earlier. This is a different way to think about a bench. It's lower to the ground. People could use it to perform on. They could just lay on it like these guys are. You could have a picnic. You can stand on it. There's so many more possibilities than just what a normal bench would give you. Here is something that is both beautiful and functional. So, you think about the concrete benches. You think about how so many of the parks make like these leveled areas to sit on. What can they do to make them look nicer? And these guys, I'm not sure if they stained the concrete or used a paint, but they use that to make it both now an art piece and something that people can go in, sit on, and it looks good in their city. When you or other people travel to cities, what do you see a lot of times? When they're taking photos, you see them in front of murals, you see them in front of sculptures, you see them taking, in the park, some beautiful thing they have there, taking photos. So it's important. You may not know it. You may not know why when you're in your city or when you're going around, but those pieces are so important for a healthy and thriving community. Normally, well, let's now take this a step farther. Most think about, sculptures and paintings and that's it. But a healthy community, if you think about all of the arts, this is what's important. Yes, looking outside and simply seeing a sculpture and a mural, it's quick, it's fast, and that's what you think, and that's what you see every day. But we have things like concerts. We have the Civic Theater. We have dance performances. These are things you can go do and have fun and appreciate. Sometimes they're teaching you about history. Sometimes it's just for fun. Without all of those things in a community, the community doesn't do well. People have to think outside of that box. We have writers, we have poets, we have so many different ways that the arts are used. You have your graphic designers, you have your architectures. People don't think that how is a building laid out and made can change the face of a neighborhood. It can change the face of a city. So architectures are very much an artist as well when they're doing this. We also have to think about the smaller things like festivals. Those are so easy for people to have, and a lot of times they're wrapped around arts and culture if you really look at what that festival is doing a lot of times. You can do small changes in your community. Think about Box. Everybody knows about Box that is in our community that's been here for too much of time. It took a simple thing as just the utility boxes that have to hold everything to make our lights work at our street corners. And instead of it being just this silver box, people are painting it. It immediately changed the fabric of our city and the fabric of our streets, and people talk about it, they love it. It's such a quick and easy thing. So what else can be done to make things like this, make your city, make your streets more attractive? Is there a possibility, instead of just having a bus stop with, metal and plastic for people to hide under, can that be an art piece, essentially? Can it be something that art pieces get changed in and out of instead of using just clear plastic? Can it be something that you can put local artists work on? So there are all kinds of ways to make these things happen in your city. So you can have art that serves a purpose. A lot of people don't think about that. They're like, oh, it's art. It's nice, but it can serve a purpose and be an art piece. And if you keep thinking about it, if you go outside and you take a walk, you want to see nice things. What if we walked into our local doctor's office or our local hotels or our local businesses, and instead of seeing the stock art that they all love to use of like a ocean that says "Be brave" or whatever on it, what if it were our local artists that were in there? How do we get our community to buy in and buy things from our local artists and use those in those places? So you're helping your economy because you're helping your artist in town, but you're also helping everybody that walks in. They're either going to know that artist and be excited for them, or they're going to see something that has real meaning behind it that was made here locally. So, MuncieArts and what we have been doing with public art recently. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process so people understand how we have been doing this. It's not just MuncieArts ourselves picking this stuff out and moving forward. So when we got the ARP funds, we had a chunk of money it was earmarked just for public art. So everybody sat down, figured out how we had to do this, where these pieces should go, kind of concentrating on areas, not the specific spot yet, and where were some important areas. So we're getting ready to do a project at Hoyt, which you'll see. We're doing stuff in Whiteley. We really focus on some places on the south side, like Future's Choice, and then the library next to Rosebud Coffee. And so those were really important places, and a small focus in downtown as well. So what we first did is we did a call out to artists. So we did this, you could fill out, submit kind of your portfolios. It was national, international, and locally. I always tell people, because people do ask, why wasn't it all local artists? You don't go to your local museum to see only things that happen in locally. So this is a jumping point. It could have very well been local people that were picked. There's a whole process, and I'll tell you how we got to it. But bringing in sometimes people from the outside can broaden what you're doing. It can be a jumping point for local artists to expand what they're doing from there as well. So we did this call out. We have this giant pool of artists that we hope to keep doing call outs off and on, keep expanding on to not only use for us, but to help other communities near us that may not have as much of a resource as we do to hold and house all of these artists' information and reach out. But then there were the areas that were defined. And so once we did that, then we formed committees in each area. So it wasn't just one committee doing all of this. We went to, like at the Hoyt project that's currently working, it's people in that local area that are on that committee with some people that are from MuncieArts guiding it. And then we do have consultants that have been helping with this because we've been in a lot of transition to become this bigger organization. So all of that together, we needed a little help. And this is what they do in Indianapolis all the time. So they had a really good background and way to do this. But we get people in that specific area, and then once they kind of get together, we form a plan, we have a spot where we meet at, and we ask the general public from that area to come in, talk to us. And then our consultants have had a great way. They lay out different art forms. So like with sculptures, they have a bunch of different types to kind of start narrowing down like what's important to that neighborhood. Was it a mural? Was it sculptures? Was it functional art that could be done? And so once we start doing that and we really narrow down like what are people in that area really wanting and looking for, then we put out a call to the artists. So we go back, we look through our artist pool, we see artists that fit with the kind of theme or ideas that particular area is wanting. We ask them, will you do a concept now? They send the concepts. Once we see the concepts and are like, these are pretty good, that's when a lot of you saw it went out to public vote then. And then the community has a lot of say. It is so important for not only us, but also in placemaking that the community has a say. Now, at the end of the day, is everybody going to be happy? No, that's just life. But we're hoping the majority of the community is on board and excited about what is happening. So once all of that is done, then the artist can go back. We do sometimes, we get input after, like okay, this is the one that won. So let's say it was like the More Love one. It won, there may have been some community feedback, and we went to the artist and be like, hey, can you change these things? And they will. So not always when you vote are you getting the exact thing you see, but it is 90% the thing, right? So you know what it is. But just like anything, concepts change a little, but we want to keep it in like the vein of what people saw. Once that's done, we live in a great state of stable weather, so immediately we can, so right now we have like 4 projects that are on hold because it's so nice outside currently. So this summer there will be a bunch of stuff happening. So once everything happens, you may not see things happening for a minute because it is so dependent on Indiana. So a lot of the stuff is happening in the summers. Once that happens, the artist comes, if from outside of town, they come in, they do the work. So right now, like the Hoyt project is a bunch of sculptural stuff, which you'll see in a minute. In the background right now, manufacturing will be starting to get the metal pieces cut, and once the earth falls here, there'll be like groundwork being done for those pieces to go in, and then when it's nice out, that'll start being put in. So that's kind of how we got there. Here are some of the pieces that we've done. This one is just right next to Rosebud Coffee. Sometimes art for art's sake is okay. Not everything has to do a callback to our history or have to, be something that tells a story about our particular community. Sometimes you just want to see nice, pretty things. And this, is a beautiful piece. It has brightened that area up so much. Rosebud is now doing murals as well, so it's a great compliment in that corner that all these things are happening. And so we were really excited about that. Dave's Alley, who hasn't walked through that alley before, right? And how many of us walked through it when it was really dark for a long time? Something as simple as adding these lights has completely changed that area. And the photos, I know Matt's done some in there, the photos that come from them are beautiful. People are excited to walk down it. The amount of people that talked about this particular thing was amazing. Now, the fun thing, and I don't know if it's a fully known fact, this piece was actually in Columbus as an artwork. When it was done, its life wasn't over, so they were like, what can we do with this? And luckily, a lot of people have connections, Kevin being one of them, to the group that works down there. And so the conversation happened, and we got to bring part of it here. So it wasn't just done, thrown away, a bunch of metal in the trash now. It's being reused and revitalizing now our community as well. So it was really a cool thing. Here's the Hoyt project. Here's just the concept because we don't have it up yet, obviously. So with this one, it was a fun concept. There was another one, and it was mainly just one kind of sculpture that people could be under and do things. It was also very beautiful, but people really wanted and loved the interactiveness this particular one could have. People can sit on it, people can stand on it and sing. There's shade. There's going to be like other little sculptures in the background that you can kind of see to really liven that whole corner up. It's the one kind of, if you know where Common Market is and Habitat for Humanity, it is right there. And so it's going to be a great asset to what is happening there. That area is really coming up. It's being revitalized, and this sculpture and this area where people can go and congregate and meet each other is going to do so much for that particular area. It is my hope that with all the ARP projects, because at the end of this year, that money is gone, that this is just a jumping point, that people see, realize, and know how important these projects have been to our community, and that they buy in and they want to keep having this happen. Are we ever going to get this much money at once? Probably not, but hopefully we can keeping momentum, even if it's a project a year that keeps helping our community grow and keeps helping, you know, people want to come here now. They want to see these things. They want to stay if their community looks nice. With this, you know, hopefully too, I've started seeing more and more murals around town. Local artists are doing things. People are seeing the impact of a mural. Now they're looking at their walls differently, which is really fun. Murals aren't a new concept either. There's some in town that you can see, they were old advertisements and stuff. Things like that made a community bright. Even if it was an advertisement, they made them pretty artistically. And you know, go to Nashville, Tennessee, what do you see? Every time I know when there are friends there because I see all the photos of them in front of the murals. A lot of people ask, why so many murals? It's an easy entry for people to do something. Sculptures are expensive. They're great, they're beautiful, they last a long time, but murals add a splash immediately. They liven up an area, and people love to drive by them, see them, stop in front of them, take pictures. How many photos of seniors do we see in front of the various murals in town? People want that nice, vibrant background. There is currently, I'm sure many of you being involved in the community have heard of the creative action plan that is currently being fostered, I guess, by the Community Foundation, and is starting these plans for placemaking. How do we do this on a bigger scale in Muncie? It's been happening on a lower level, but how do we get everybody together on the same page, get all these art organizations together, because right now is the time, we're all excited, we're all moving in this direction to make things like this happen in our city. How do we get everybody on this same page to keep moving? How do we make this creative corridor happen here? How do we get not only artists coming together, but nonprofits and the general community to buy in and see this? Because every day you're interacting with something that involves this. You just may not realize it or know it at that point. But Muncie has a very vibrant arts community. If you've not looked around or you've not talked to some of the people, there are so many artists here in town doing great and amazing things right now. I know how much I talked about, again, sculptures and paintings and stuff, because those are very quick ways, but we also saw some other examples of that. But just keep in mind, here in Muncie, we have the Civic Theater. It's huge. It's such an artistic thing. They have come, and I hear great things every weekend. I hear people just like talking about how great the shows are and how awesome it was to go there and see everything. And if you drive down the street and you see their big sign lit up, it just kind of brings that like sense of nostalgia back as well. There's incredibly talented musicians around here. There's not a night that I don't hear somebody going, hey, I'm going to an open mic, or I'm going to go to this, or whatever. And, we have such a mecca of musicians around here. We have writers, poets, dancers, designers, and so much more that's outside of just these like sculptures and paintings that keep this community thriving. And if we can get a place for everybody to come together and really work and be on that same page, the community can thrive even more. And outside of that, there are events that happen in this community every year. There's the 3 Trail series. There's festivals like the Old Washington Street Festival. There's Oktoberfest now. There's Fire Up Downtown. A lot of these events are free. That's also so important that we have people in this town that are willing to put money behind these things to offer it for free, because we have a community that that isn't the most, we're not rich, and there's a lot of people that don't have these opportunities every single day. And if we can take those barriers away, they can come and see, they can walk into these festivals and not spend $1 if they don't have it, but they can still see the local artists. They can hear the musicians that are playing at these. They can see the different entertainment that is happening and be involved in their community that way and have access to these things. That is so important, and it is so lucky that our town has those things. I think we can still do more of those things for this community to take these barriers away. Other opportunities that you see, you go to shows, you go to the open mics, the concerts, the poetry rings, you buy local books, you buy local candle makers. These are all people that are doing artistic things, and you are helping the economy here, and you're giving people reasons to stay right here in this community. You're giving people reasons to want to come here. You're giving them reasons to want to stay at our hotels, eat at our restaurants, and make this community thriving. That's all I gotta say. Sorry. Yes.
So, you mentioned local artists. Is there a directory of local artists, or if I wanted local art, how would I find these people?
Yes. So, good question. So part of this whole creative space plan that is happening right now, gathering those resources is part of it. And that's kind of, I think, in the year plan. Was that this year plan, maybe? So there's steps with this right now that they are doing, and gathering those assets to be able to, have a resource where you can look that up is something that is in those plans, because it is very important. Right now it is hard. Like, I know a lot of them because I'm in the community. But doing a little research, going out and doing these festivals, but long term, that is a very important piece to this puzzle that's happening.
How do you preserve this stuff over a longer period of time? I remember when, I actually love the underpass and the art on there, but the person who put Marquise on it did it 5 years ago, and it's still there.
That's a whole complicated thing outside of, so that problem is compounded by it being on the railways part, and then there was talk about the railway was coming in to fix the bridge some, and then, so that one's a little bit more complicated than in general, but in general, when you have public art, another very important step in all of this is having a way to have money set aside that helps for repairs and upkeep. So some things, like we've done the boxes. When we have those painted, we put an anti-graffiti coating on them. Little known fact, I just found out that apparently people think that if you do that, it just doesn't let paint stick at all, which is not true. What it does is it almost, if you go up and feel it, it almost feels like rubber cement a little bit. It has a barrier between the actual paint and what somebody does. So there was somebody that graffitied a box down off Tillotson earlier last year. So they painted it. What happens then is we can take, not using chemicals, which is the important thing, because people are like, I'm just buying a bunch of chemicals. And I was like, please don't go touch that. So you can use warm soap and scrub brushes, and it kind of rolls that paint off. And then it'll last a couple of times, and then we have to put that graffiti remover back, or graffiti repellent essentially, back on it. So it's a coating, but it doesn't like I said, after that, everybody was shocked because they're like, they should have done this. It's like, no, we did. It just allows there to be space between the actual painting, so you can remove it. So that helps with the upkeep. Obviously, we are in, UV out on paint, so the quality of what is being used is so important. There are so many people that are just like, oh, I'm just going to buy some really cheap paint, put it up there, it's going to be fine. That fades pretty quickly. Picking colors is a really important thing. Pinks, they aren't going to last long a lot of times, unless you lean into knowing that and you use lighter pinks because it's not as visible. But if you use hot pink, that's going to fade pretty quickly. So having a budget for those touch-ups is very important. And also knowing art's not forever. So sometimes we put up a mural. In our contract with the ARP, it's 10 years. That's what it's a must. After that, if they last longer, that's the hope and dream, right? But let's say in 10 years, one is failing, that one of the murals is failing. It's a new canvas. You know, we can do something new with it. The sculptures obviously last a lot longer, but we are out in, you know, heat, cold, all that stuff. So having a good maintenance plan, which out of all of these, we've asked like the artists to come up with a maintenance plan, like what could help keep everything a little longer. But at the end of the day, we really need people to buy in and know that there has to be money set aside for fixing these things. And it's just as easy as there's a box on the south side. Again, not our problem because we don't own the boxes, but it's been hit by a car, so it's all crumpled up. You know, once the city eventually someday probably fixes that and puts it up, it'll probably just be clean metal. Then we can go in and have another artist paint it. But things do happen, you know, in that way. But for longevity, we do have to have a strong thought about putting money aside to fix things.
So I'll jump in quickly on that. Dan Wolford with Ball Brothers Foundation. And obviously arts and culture is a big thing of what we support at the foundation and see as an important thing for the community and our, you know, overall quality of life here. So what we did recently at the end of 2024 was help the Community Foundation and start a public art fund specifically for what you're talking about, which could be for design, creation, installation, and care for public art. So in conjunction with the Community Foundation, we started a fund for $75,000 and we've invited the Community Foundation to apply for an additional $75,000 this round to, in essence, just get that fund off the ground. And that it'll be an endowment fund at the Community Foundation that then we would be able to draw for certain art projects. But that's one way of helping in the future to keep these, you know, being taken care of. And hopefully, this has been great. Thank you, Kim, for sharing all the fun things that you guys are doing and that are upcoming in the future too.
Yeah, thank you.
I was going to say the More Love mural. I know that they reached out to the community and asked organizations to participate, neighbors to participate in that. And so once a part of Muncie Rotary, I went and got to paint that mural. I met so many neighbors from that area that had come and were painting it also. So I think that's a bigger part of also that there's some community involvement. So it's like, you're really proud of that when you drive through your neighborhood, you know, you get to see that I was a part of that. And so like I said, when I hit that corner of the stoplight, I'm just like, I painted that little piece right there in the corner. So it really, you know, does the same thing as like what you're talking about. It brings the whole community, or it kind of uplifts the neighborhood because you were a part of that, so I want to do something else in my neighborhood to keep this going. And I think that's just the start of that. So I think that's a great part of that.
Because it was a really cool day when you did that too.
Yeah, it wasn't July, I don't think.
It's like a mega paint by numbers.
Yeah, yeah.
And it really was, because they had it all outlined, and they would have it, they had the outlines, and you paint went through these lines, and but if you messed up, they had that color paint to go back over it. They knew what they were doing.
If you are an artist or know an artist that would like to be part of the community development in the art space, what is your platform?
So right now, earlier last year, they had a couple of like community events for input. So right now the next steps are there's like kind of taking all that input right now and breaking it up into pieces that can be done. And then as we're doing that, us is a strong word, Community Foundation is kind of the leader on that with a bunch of us helping. As that kind of keeps going, there will be now coming up later this year some more community like sessions for input. So you're kind of watching out, definitely watch the Community Foundation. I think Ball Brothers will probably be promoting some of that, and MuncieArts, like when those things will be happening. But there will be more input as things move on, like what's next, how are we doing this, you know, and like we were in a meeting the other day, this whole process, people want to see things done tomorrow. This is years. This is going to be years that you're going to see start like slow transitions as to what is happening to create this corridor and this space. So don't get frustrated and think nothing's happening. It's just, it takes a while getting infrastructure, getting all the input from the different community partners and the community itself. And so kind of watch right now, because I don't know when the next public kind of talks are. And then again, with MuncieArts, this next year is a big transition for us as well. And then a lot of things might be changing or shifting, but we do have like that artist directory. We did a big call out a while back. We're actually, Monday, a new executive director is starting. So when she kind of gets settled, then we're going to be kind of talking about like when's our next round of like calling out. So we have this directory. You know, that has not just helped us, but there were a couple of the local associations that got ARP funds, and two of them put aside money for art, and so they came to us and were like, hey, we know you have this resource. So they look solely at Indiana artists and that kind of stuff. So we want to make sure that as many artists are in this pool as possible, both locally, nationally, and all that, because like, you know, like Jay County has reached out, like they don't have the resources as much as we do to be doing these artist call outs and ask, like, can you share like assets and resources? And so that's kind of the plan moving forward, is how do we share all of these amongst. So there will be more times coming. Not all the answers are solid right now, because there is a lot of unknown and building right now as to who's going to be holding what puzzle piece.
Online presence for that?
For which?
Online presence to take a look at everything that is being done and what's coming down the pipeline?
So the Community Foundation, they posted on their social media and on their website. There is, if you look at, I think it's under Art Space, they released like the smaller version. They kind of condensed it all. Of like what the broad thought and plan is. It's not written in stone. So if you read it and you're like, whoa, no, like they're like, these were consultants that came in, they read the room essentially and put this in. And so now that they've seen that, the next steps are like kind of talking to the community again, talking to like different partners. So that one's a good resource. MuncieArts has been putting, like if you're interested in like the art that we have been doing, our social media has been pretty active about that. We've kind of been working on the website again, new executive director soon, so some of that stuff will be kind of taking off again. And then do you know other resources right now?
I would say though, if the Community Foundation was in the room, they would tell you that they are not driving the bus.
Yes.
That very clear that the community is driving the bus. They're trying to get the right people on the bus to help with the process, and just certain organizations in town that help things move along, but it's truly community input that they're trying to make these decisions on. So they've had these open discussions, and they're going to have more.
Yeah.
But they definitely don't want to take credit for.
No.
They're just trying to really convene people, the right people, to kind of move the bus forward. So
They're kind of keeping the paperwork and the people gathered to do it.
That portion I am aware of because I was a part of the selections committee for the Whiteley Community Council project.
Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I am aware of lots of other land banks that use abandoned property to create public art spaces.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that collaboration starts really early in the property disposition process. I'm wondering, it sounds like there's a plan that's coming up for whatever, it's coming out of the Community Foundation. I'm wondering if you might want to collaborate with the land bank on thinking about how we can share with you properties that might become available, thinking about what kinds of recreation of those spaces might occur, working with specific artists on properties that where they would have a vision. There's, I think, as much as the community is driving with us, we want to have specific processes so that we can include you in what we do, and we can be included in what you do, because
Yeah.
you said that the community are so important.
Right. Yeah. And this next year, things are going to help that. One, at the last meeting, the land bank absolutely came up and was on the like, oh, we need to reach out to them kind of thing. but as far as like the MuncieArts side that I can speak to pretty well is we are kind of transitioning. A lot of it is still going to be community input, so we don't know exactly where we're landing at the end of the day, but our transition is becoming a bigger, more robust organization that is kind of a hub. And with this hub, is we would be holding things like this, like how do we get, like, okay, we know Cornerstone's doing a thing and Madjax is doing a thing. Oh, these are similar, they should be talking together. What's the land bank doing? And having MuncieArts be that kind of bigger overall hub to connect everybody, because that is something that is not very strong right now in our community. And so if the talks keep going like they are and we kind of move into that position, MuncieArts will be kind of that glue that helps these situations. So we know, like, okay, we know the land bank has these things and important assets that we need to be talking to them about. And the real estate part came up as well, like as we're planning this, like as we know more, like what portions of the community do we need to really be talking to realtors about, and this is when the land bank came up and everything. It's just not today because there is a lot of like still building to figure out exactly what's happening. But at the end, that is our goal as MuncieArts, as we're kind of transitioning, is to be that connector, and we're hoping like things like what you just said happen and that we can help facilitate that, and hopefully sooner rather than later, not a year from now. But there is a lot right now. Like we went through like the next stages on like what's feasible right now, what do we have to know before we do those things first, because people will ask these questions and if we haven't done this. So there is kind of a plan, and like I said, like he did say it very well, the community foundation isn't the driving force. They're definitely just like getting everybody together in a room and being the people that finally is organized enough to do that. Do you have a question?
I will add that what we did recently with this planning was look at those short-term objectives. There's 6 of them that were published with that report. We prioritized scheduling of them and then who was going to take ownership and who should be involved.
Mm-hmm.
So your comment about involving Muncie Land Bank absolutely fits into the inventory that's supposed to happen with spaces that can be created or commercial use for cultural organizations, looking at inventory of downtown spaces that can be available within that corridor, and then absolutely any possibility for the historic tax credit. So that looks at creative spaces that have adaptive reuse, that can be reused for projects. So that very much lends itself to abandoned or public land that may be available for that partnership. So I'll make sure that this comment and this note gets back to the committee as well.
Right?
Yep.
There's some beautiful stuff that's been done. I mean, one of the, when you were talking about temporality, like how long something lasts, one of the needs that the land bank has is we hold property for a certain period of time, and during that time, all we do is mow the lawn, and it looks fine, but I think it could look a lot better, even if there were temporary art exhibitions or sculptures or things that we do from the lot. But right now, we just have like realtor signs. Like you all had artists who wanted to do cool stuff that would make the properties look nice.
So there is a goal to be kind of all-encompassing kind of organizations and even economic development. So a lot of conversations about MPA, DAC, I don't know what you're being called now, but economic development, how they can very similarly help with property and stewarding kind of commercial spaces that can be then reconverted for other purposes. So it's just very early in the stages of figuring out what the action plans are and how we're prioritizing short term. And so it's not coming back with like a big secrecy or like an access. It really is from the very early stages of planning.
Mm-hmm.
So you go to this really great input.
I think you said, I was going to ask, how you decided where?
Oh, yeah, the where. So part of that was after the conversations about like the general neighborhoods that we wanted. Part of those conversations when we did like the group of showing different like artistic styles, and if it's murals and sculptures, and having that conversation with the community there. Part of that was like, where would you like to see these things? And the consultants had like these maps out, and you could like pinpoint like different areas, and then they took that information and kind of went okay, where were the most wanted areas, to okay, will this person let us have a mural on their building or use their property as, and so if they said yes, then they would take the most common areas that everybody really wanted to see stuff, reach out to those people. They say yes, and then that's kind of when they narrowed down where they could be with everything. So it was all also community input and kind of voting and tiering everything through during those conversations. So, yes.
Are you familiar with anything about Arizona?
I know it's in the United States.
Well, they have a project that one of the mayors, it's probably been about 7 years since I last talked to any of the residents there. But like, if you've ever been, if anybody's ever been to Arizona, Phoenix Mesa area, very cultural and a lot of murals around town. It was told to me by one of the residents that actually, usually you just see it on like abandoned buildings or walls or whatnot, but this was on somebody's property, so I knocked on the door, was like, hey, you know, did you have somebody do this? And it was like, no, I was asked by the mayor if it'd be okay. Like what they did was they asked the gang unit to go out and find people who might have known how to do like, it was some great artwork. And they just asked for it not to be sexual or you know, violent or anything like that. And like if you ever go there, and it's not in the ritzy neighborhood. It's in like the low income neighborhoods, and it just makes it look really bright and welcoming.
Yeah, and with all of this, I mean, having this in the low income areas is, I feel, the highest priority when you're first starting this, because those areas get looked over so often. And if you start getting things like this, people start going to that area and then seeing it's not as scary as in their head they've made it out to be. And, you know, they start connecting with the people in that area and talking and using their parks and everything. So having a lot of these, and that was kind of the focus of some of these areas. If you look about where when we talked about where should these ARP funds be used, it's in lower income areas that a lot of times do get looked over, and they're so rich in history. You know, the Whiteley area, when we were talking about this, a lot of them are very like, we want our history told through these pieces. Not every single one has to be, but they really wanted at least some amount of their history in those pieces. And so we listened to that. And again, like listening to those communities that do get looked over all the time, you know, a lot of times they do want their history. They want that. Sometimes they just want things that are usable and pretty and bring people in and something for them to have as well. And so that is important. And I have seen stuff like, you know, that where the community really gives a space for artists that sometimes, like graffiti, everybody's like, oh, graffiti, it's awful. It's like, it's beautiful. Like, if you give people a space and some parameters, great things come out of that a lot of times as well. You know, some of my favorite graffiti has been under the underpasses here on the trail and stuff. There's some beautiful work. But yeah, getting in and talking to those artists and not making them feel like they're just like, society doesn't want to see graffiti and, you know, it pushes them away, give them their voice. And yeah, great things happen like that.
Some of the work that Ken talked about with Art Space, so Mesa Art Space Lofts in Arizona is related and gives some credibility again. So I think that the organization that the King Foundation is using to help spur kind of underline young thinking, that they built some apartment housing that has financial benefit for the economy in that community, but also has some advancement and some opportunities for artists to have some spare thing there, both in either working space or living space. So I think just because you brought that up, that really underscores the credibility of the work that is being done and how it's being tied just beyond Indiana and kind of throughout the country with creative and cultural spaces.
Yeah, when I went last year, like one of the areas, I go about 4 times a year, but the last time I visited last year, one of the areas that wasn't developed, they like literally had like 4 different apartment buildings over there in that area now. It's like, you know, never went from low level to now. It's got more of a respected neighborhood going on now.
Yep.
Less violent. You can tell that it's just less happy, less homeless population.
Anything else? All right. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things, maybe kind of a spin-off benefit is just that it sounds like you guys have done a lot of planning. And I feel like that's one of the things that the Land Bank has been trying to offer to Muncie as well, like not just running and doing things, but actually doing planning based on community voice, but also on data and I think that there's, from the Land Bank's perspective, I think there's some real, we're the Muncie Land Bank, so we like to think of ourselves as serving all of Muncie, but because of limited resources, our model is we're going to focus on specific areas, and try to make an impact before we would move into other areas, because we have to choose because of some of those limitations, but thinking about how we could include art in kind of like the neighborhood revitalization plans that we're, which is, focused more on housing and things like that, but I think there's a great opportunity for collaboration. And of course, if there's, if we can get out ahead of things and grab property and set those aside, or some of the ideas that John mentioned about, getting more use out of the property that we have is just sitting there. I think would be an awesome conversation to start. You may have mentioned too, but who's the new director?
So the new director is going to be Tanya Side. So,
I think I know her.
yeah, it'll be released on Monday. She starts on Monday. So, but yeah, you'll recognize her, I'm sure.
Okay. Any last? Anything else? Kind of a segue talking about planning. Next month. So the Land Bank this year, you probably know this, but we have a partnership that's really starting to develop with the Urban Planning Department of Ball State. And we've used now, we're into the 5th studio, I think. So urban planning students, they have 2nd-year studio, 3rd-year studio, getting out in the neighborhoods, doing community engagement, doing data collection. We've used them multiple years now. One of the things that we're additionally partnering with is trying to build up this series a little bit, our First Friday series, and so we're going to start bringing in folks from other parts of the state. So next month it's Tom Corcoran, right? Tim Corcoran. Tim Corcoran, who's urban planning graduate. He works for the South Bend Planning Commission. As a city, they've invested a lot in planning. I think he's the head planning director, and then he's got a staff of 5, 6, 7, 8 people. So anyways, he's going to come in, and because of that, they've been really, South Bend has been able to do some really amazing public-private partnerships around neighborhood redevelopment, housing, those kinds of things. So he's going to be here in March, and then we're going to have some folks from Fort Wayne, also planners, also graduates from both states, coming in April. So anyways, please come again next month. Thank you again, Kim. That was really great.
Thank you.